To my mind, any exercise in voter list revision should be judged by three yardsticks. Number one, completeness. Second is accuracy. Number three is equity. In terms of completeness, Bihar, which is to say how inclusive is the voters list, Bihar was 97% when the SIR began. It came down to 88%. And if any significant deletions take place on account of lack of documents, it will be lower than that. So that's a failure clearly. In terms of accuracy, because mind you, that's the central claim of SIR. Okay, we may have been slightly over the board, but we've cleaned it up. We have purified. We have now a perfect electoral rolls. That claim has been simply blown apart by not merely by the instances of alive people who have been declared dead, but the multiple instances now being reported. One house with 290 names. I know of one house that houses the entire booth of 924 voters. We have instances of duplication, not just in one or two places, but 7 or 8 places. So clearly duplication has not been done away with. The figures available with us suggest that in every single constituency, anything between 2,000 to 5,000 names have been duplicated. So if accuracy was your criteria, then duplicacy has not been removed. Dubious household names have not been removed. We do not yet know what accuracy improvement has taken place. And finally, equity. We know for sure that the whole thing has been designed, has systematically discriminated against women. In our own little survey, we found out that people who are liable to be left out on account of lack of documents are more likely to be SC and the EBC, the lowest OBCs. So it's loaded against the poor and the disadvantaged and the marginal groups. So to my mind, so far, the SIR exercise has failed in all the three tests. It has made it less complete, not more accurate. I would not say more inaccurate, I don't know, but at least as inaccurate as it used to be, and certainly more iniquitous.
In other words, it's failed effectively on all three counts.
Exactly. Such a large exercise with bombastic claims and very little to show. Does it not remind you of something, Karan? It was called demonetization.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. In the last couple of days, we've heard sweeping claims about the special intensive revision of the electoral rolls presently underway in Bihar, which contradict almost everything reported so far by newspapers, NGOs, and activists. Is it really possible that 98.2% of people have uploaded their documents? What is the truth about the Supreme Court's ruling about the use of Aadhaar cards as a sufficient document? And what about the other concerns regarding the special intensive revision? Are they alleviated or are they still to be addressed? Those are the key issues I should raise today with someone who's intently following this exercise, the National Convenor of the Bharat Jodo Abhiyan, Yogendra Yadav. Yogendra Yadav, on Sunday, the Election Commission announced that 98.2% of people on the draft electoral roll in Bihar have submitted their documents. If correct, that is a remarkable level of compliance, but it completely contradicts what newspapers, NGOs, activists, and opposition politicians believe to be the case. So let me start by asking, do you believe the 98.2% figure? Or do you have serious doubts about it?
Karan, when I first read the figures, I was dazzled, I was intrigued. I couldn't believe it. But of course, my not believing doesn't matter. The real question was, what does it mean to say that 98.2%? And incidentally, yesterday the figure was revised to 99 point something. What does it mean to say that 98 or 99% have given the document? Now, This could mean very different things. And unfortunately, Election Commission is behaving just like companies do, just like departments do, just like ministries and ministers do, which is to curate the data to present in a way which conceals more than it reveals, which doesn't tell you very much, but it impresses you. So, what's the first impression you carry? Well, the first impression is mission completed, everything is well. All those who said people don't have document must have been lying, must have been misleading. Everything is perfect in Bihar. Now, what is the catch? The catch is the word document. As you know, Karan, there are two broad categories. There are those who have been given a bypass. The Election Commission said that those who appeared on 2003 rolls, they don't need to produce documents. They just need to give an extract of the voters list. So first thing, we don't know how many of these 98% are those who've just given an extract, or on their behalf, BLO can give the extract. That's not a big thing. The real issue is for those who do not have their names on 2003 list, and those who were required to give documents which proved either their date of birth or their place of birth or address and other things, etc. These were serious documentary requirements. Everyone said people don't have it. In the newspapers, we read reports saying people are scrambling for documents, they are frustrated, they are angry, they are bewildered. Election Commission's data doesn't tell us that. And the catch there is this. When they say people have given document, does it mean it is one of the 11 documents the Election Commission had asked for? Or is it any document? For instance, I would be curious, how many of them have just given Aadhaar, something the Election Commission refuses to accept? So are these the valid documents? Are these the eligibility documents? Are these the documents which will pass scrutiny? And this is not an academic question, because whether they make it to the final list or not would depend not on supplying document, but on whether they have supplied valid documents, the documents the Election Commission had asked for.
In fact, as recently as the 18th of August, the Indian Express on its front page published a report that when the first phase of the special intensive revision ended, as few as, I'll repeat that, as few as 15-20% of the eligible voters had attached any of the Election Commission's mandated documents. Could that figure really have gone up to 98.2% in such a short space of time?
Impossible, I would say, for two reasons. Number one, a figure of 15 to 20%, something which incidentally is also corroborated by a survey that we had done. The figure can go up somewhat because now people know Election Commission has given additional days. So we can presume that some people had the documents, they couldn't provide it at that moment. So some of them must have done it. But the real problem, Karan, which we have been pointing out again and again and again, and which is corroborated by official statistics, by ground survey, by news reports and everything, that a very large number of them do not simply have those documents and cannot possibly acquire one. This is the real issue. Election Commission has put documentary conditions for being on the voters list, which are impossible to meet, not because of any fault of the voters, not because of their lethargy, not because of something they should have done and they haven't done, but those documents are such that they have no business to have those documents.
In fact, a survey that you've done yourself, the Bharat Jodo Abhiyan, which is published in today's Indian Express, gives very telling results about the people who are required to have documents. Only 18% of people in your survey were able to submit even one of the 11 required documents. And an astonishing 43% haven't got any of those documents at all, which means that 43% are liable to be disenfranchised. And you estimate in your article in the Indian Express today that could be 2 crore people.
That's right, Karan. The threat is as large as that. Normally, we should not be having to do such a survey because, the information that we can get is minuscule compared to the information the Election Commission is sitting on. And interestingly, Karan, all it takes for the election commission is click of a button. They have the information that you and I are speculating about, thinking about, wondering about. They wouldn't release it in the public domain. So therefore, once the exercise was over, between 30th of August, 30th of July, and the 13th of August, we sent our people to different constituencies, this time randomly selected, and randomly selected households. And we said, okay, let's find out what exactly how many people got the documents in the first place, how many people got the enumeration form in the first place, how many have returned it, how many did not sign it themselves, how many did not put any photographs, how many put what kind of documents, and how many possess what kind of documents. That's what the survey was all about. And as you rightly said, the first important thing is that only 18% of those who were required to give documents, mind you, we've taken out those who already had their names in 2003. So they don't really need to give any documents. We are focusing now only on that group which needs to give a document. Among them, only 18%, 1 out of 6, say that they had given one of these 11 documents of the Election Commission. What about the rest? Another 41% say that yes, we gave a document, but what document did they give? Aadhaar. Everyone says, we gave Aadhaar, and they think they've done the job. They don't even know. Most of them don't even know that the document they have given is not acceptable to the Election Commission. And as for the remaining, they have given no document whatsoever. Now, that number may have gone up. In the meanwhile, Election Commission is working hard. And as we saw in the first phase, orders go from above to say, don't leave figures unattended. We have to reach 98. We have to reach 99. So some papers are being submitted. Some papers are being submitted on their behalf. Some papers are being inserted. And I fear, as was the case in the first phase of SIR, the BLO is being very creative. The BLO is being very active. And you may not know, but documents are being submitted on your behalf. The real question still remains, are these the documents that the Election Commission considers valid?
So to sum up, for all the reasons that we've so far discussed, that claim that 98.2% of people have submitted their documents, a claim which you say went up yesterday to slightly over 99%, that claim is very, very hard to believe.
It's dubious if the word document means, and as it should mean, the documents that are acceptable to the Election Commission. If Election Commission is advertising to the world the documents that Election Commission itself believes are unacceptable, then it's a dubious exercise in statistics.
Now, something else that happened on Sunday, Yogendra Yadav, is that Amit Malviya, the head of the BJP's IT department, claimed the Supreme Court had not authorized the use of Aadhaar as a separate and sufficient document for the special intensive revision. But the truth is, on the 22nd, the Supreme Court specifically instructed the Election Commission to accept Aadhaar in the case of the 65 lakhs whose names have been deleted from the draft roll. So as far as that 65 lakh are concerned, Amit Malviya is simply just wrong.
As has been the case so very often, Karan, what's new here? Amit Malviya coming up with one more dodgy fact, one more lie. The interesting thing, however, here are 2 or 3. Number one, earlier I used to say and feel very perturbed by the fact that the distinction between the Election Commission and the Home Ministry is being obliterated, because Election Commission is doing things that the Home Ministry should be worried about: foreigners, detecting foreigners, reporting them, and so on and so forth. With BJP's activation in the last 3 or 4 days, the lines that separate a constitutional authority like Election Commission, a governmental authority like the state, the central government, and a political party like the BJP, those lines are being blurred. Election Commission says things, BJP offers justification. BJP does things, Election Commission turns its eyes away from that. That's one. And the second is the technical point that you correctly made. The question of Aadhaar has been very hotly contested in the Supreme Court. As you know, in the very first hearing that took place on the 10th of July, the Supreme Court recommended to the Election Commission please include Aadhaar as one of the documents. Election Commission got back, hotly contested it, said we cannot accept it for ABC reason. However, we are kind of accepting it, and that was a very ambiguous reply. On the 14th of August, in its first interim order, the Supreme Court clearly said that aggrieved parties, which is to say these 65 lakhs whose names have been dropped, they can apply with any document or Aadhaar. It was clearly mentioned that Aadhaar as a standalone document will be accepted. People had problems in doing so on the ground. We came back to the Supreme Court. And while there have been doubts about the remaining population, the Supreme Court order once again clarifies on the order given recently on the 22nd, once again clarifies that as far as those 65 lakhs are concerned, any document or Aadhaar will be accepted. So there's absolutely no doubt about it. It happens to be one more case of Mr. Amit Malviya speaking things which are not truthful. But that should not matter. The ambiguity is about the remaining 7.24
I'll come to that
crores.
remaining ambiguity in a moment's time, but let me just point out that the sad part is several papers reported what Amit Malviya claimed on their front pages yesterday, Monday. As far as I know, not one of those papers pointed out that Malviya was wrong as far as the 65 lakh are concerned. They reported it as if he was factually correct. Now, there is a certain uncertainty, as you were beginning to point out, and it's to do with whether Aadhaar cards can be submitted as sufficient documentation by the 7.24 crore people who are on the draft rolls but may not have the required 11 documents. Am I right in saying, as far as that category of people are concerned, the Supreme Court didn't make its position clear? It didn't rule it out, but it didn't rule it in either. There's a sort of gray area here. We just don't know.
I'm afraid that's true. We really thought that this time we would have clarity on that. But there remains an ambiguity. If you read para 9 of the Supreme Court's latest order, it clearly mentions Aadhaar. It says documents or Aadhaar. It's not quite clear whether it applies only to the 65 lakhs or does it apply to the 7.24 crores. So yes, the Supreme Court's intent in every single hearing, the judges have repeatedly pushed the Election Commission. Why not Aadhaar? It's there. Please remember, Karan, that today, if you want your own voter list, your name to be removed from wherever it is, let's say you want to go to Ghaziabad. The first thing you would be asked to produce is to file a Form 6, and the first document it will ask you to give is Aadhaar. So Aadhaar exists on the statutes of the Election Commission. Aadhaar is a mandatory document for the rest of the country. But for Bihar, and in the SIR exercise, they say Aadhaar is not valid. So the judges have been repeatedly pushing the Election Commission. However, the Election Commission have been very ambiguous, and as yet we do not have a clear order specifying that.
In fact, Aadhaar would be a lifeline for the people in the survey that we were discussing earlier, the survey that you did for the Indian Express, which was published on their op-ed page today. For the 43% who haven't got any documents out of the 11 specified by the Election Commission to submit, the Aadhaar would be a lifeline for them, because they could submit the Aadhaar, and on the basis of Aadhaar, they could continue to remain on the rolls and not be struck off. So when the next hearing of the Supreme Court happens, which is on the 8th of September, and you're one of the petitioners in front of the Supreme Court, will you point this out to the court, that our survey shows that up to 43% of people don't have the required 11 documents to submit? Please permit them to submit Aadhaar in its place so that they can continue to be voters. Will you make that point to the court?
Of course we will. We had submitted the findings of our previous survey as well in the court. We will file that as well. We would also request the court to look at two other things. Number one, the fact that Aadhaar has near 100% saturation is something that the government itself accepts. In 2023, the government had released data for Aadhaar saturation in the 18 plus population, which is what is relevant. Otherwise, we have all kinds of data coming every month. And that showed that in Bihar, the saturation is actually a little above 100%, which is to say some dead people continue to have Aadhaar cards, etc. So it is near 100%. And in the survey that we have conducted, of the 43% you mentioned, who have no document whatsoever, who simply cannot fulfill this criteria, this demand of one of those 11 documents, nearly every one of them, 97% of them, possess Aadhaar card. And if you allow Ration as well, it will cross 99%. So the irony is that the documents that the Election Commission knows people do not have are the documents that are being demanded. And the document that everyone knows people have are the ones being discarded. And strangely, the documents that are being discarded today are the documents that the Election Commission has been accepting till yesterday, is accepting in the rest of the world, rest of the country. What weird logic.
There is, however, a small problem. The second phase of the SIR exercise ends in 6 days' time on the 1st of September. But the next hearing of the Supreme Court is not till the 8th of September, which is when you will get this opportunity to make this point to the judges. So will you also say to them that since that 98.2% figure is very hard to believe and less than credible, that they should perhaps extend the deadline so that people who have Aadhaar can now get an opportunity to present Aadhaar as their document and remain on the electoral roll? Will you ask for that extension for this?
Indeed, Karan, we actually asked for that in the 22nd hearing. Mr. Kapil Sibal pressed for it. There were discussions about it. The court said, don't worry, nothing is cast in stone. If by the next hearing we realize that people have not got sufficient chances, we will look at it. And we are sure even Election Commission would be happy to extend the deadline if the number of claims are large, if things are happening. That these are the words of Justice Suryakant. He said, I'm sure the Election Commission would look at these things, etc. So yes, we will point out. And one thing that we would demand, Karan, is why should such an important case depend on a small survey done by an activist group? Election Commission has all this data on the click of a button. They should be required to produce it on an affidavit. Exactly how many people have produced a document? Among those, how many people have produced which document exactly? How many people have produced one of the 11 documents that they demanded? And of the remaining, how many have produced simply Aadhaar and nothing else? Then the situation would be stark and clear to the Supreme Court to say, and to my mind, the simple situation is that if you reject Aadhaar, a very substantial number of people will have to be dropped. There is no other way unless the Election Commission comes out with a sleight of hand and says that we have expanded the scope of exemptions. It's a little tricky point, but I want you to understand that. Originally, when SIR came, the exemption or the bypass from having to give documents was extended to those who themselves figured on 2003 rolls. So my parents would be exempted, but I would not be exempted if I was not on rolls in 2003. A week later, Election Commission said that while you will not be exempted, but if your parents were on the rolls, you don't have to submit any documents for your parents. Small relaxation, but it clarified that you would still have to file documents for your birth, etc. What we realize on the ground is that Election Commission is doing something altogether different, which has been widely reported in the newspapers. Now the Election Commission is saying on the ground that if your parents were on the electoral rolls in 2003, or any relation of yours was on electoral roll in 2003, then they don't have to produce certificates, you don't have to produce their certificates, and you don't have to produce your own certificates. Now that's a massive bypass, which is a sleight of hand. So either it has to be a sleight of hand or relaxation of documents. Otherwise, as I said, nearly 2 crore people will have to be disenfranchised.
That is the worrying figure I want to underline. If there isn't what you call a massive sleight of hand, and if the Supreme Court doesn't agree to extending the deadline and accepting, more importantly, Aadhaar can be given as a document by the 7.24 crore who are on the rolls but may not have documents, then as many as 2 crore people, that's 20 million, could be disenfranchised. And that's pretty close to something like 25% of the total electorate of Bihar.
Absolutely. That is the real worry, is that we have been expressing right from day one, that the documentary requirements are of a kind which are simply impossible to meet for a very large number of persons in Bihar specifically. But in any state of India, in a place like Kerala, it might come down to 5%. In Bihar, it could be 25%. But there is not a single place in India where something like SIR would not lead to such a large disenfranchisement if it were to be implemented the way the order is worded. The difficulty, Karan, is, and it's a very strange practice that we are witnessing. If you remember the demonetization days, every day that the RBI used to amend its order and come up with a new notification. At least they did that. The EC is not even amending its order, but giving oral instructions to change the nature of rules. That is a problem. So we don't know what rules actually operate on the ground. But if the rules are as they say on the paper, then clearly 65 lakhs have been thrown out. Of them, maybe 5 lakh would make their way back because of thanks to the Supreme Court's orders. Because it's not that only 5 lakhs were genuine. There are so many other genuine people because the moment the onus is transferred onto the people, you go and get your names back. It will only be a minority who comes and does that. So 65 lakhs have already been removed. And another 1.5 crore, maybe more, would be deleted on account of lack of documents. If the Supreme Court, if the EC goes by its own words.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Let's at this point come to some of the other concerns that have emerged and have worried newspapers, activists, and NGOs about the special intensive revision. There have been several reports, including on the front page of today's Indian Express, claiming that more women have been deleted or kept out of the draft rolls than men. And this is counter to what one would expect, because it's male Biharis who actually travel out of the state to look for work, not their wives, not their sisters, certainly not their children. If these reports that more women have been deleted than men are true, what does it suggest about the way this special intensive revision is happening?
This, Karan, is not just a claim, it is a fact. Because this is not based on any small sample. This is not based on some journalist impression. All the deleted names have been scanned, analyzed. So we know for a fact that among those who have been deleted, 5 lakh more women have been deleted. 5 point something lakh more women have been deleted than men. This is extraordinary because how would you be deleted? You can be deleted because of death. On the death score, the proportion of men and women is about the same, as it should be, because the death rate is about the same. You can be deleted because you are duplicate. No reason for women to be more duplicate voter than men. You can be deleted because they are untraceable. Unless the men refuse to see women, there is no reason for women to be untraceable. That boils down to that one single category of permanently moved away. Now, as you said, permanently moved away, people who have migrated. There are only two situations of migration. Either the entire family migrates, men and women, everyone migrates, or men go out, women stay back. At least I have not heard of a single case, there may be one or two, where women goes out to work in Bihar and man stays back to look after the household. That would be rather odd, isn't it? But if you were to now believe Election Commission's figures, something like that is happening in Bihar. More women have migrated than men. That's odd. The only explanation that I can think of, possible logical explanation, is that women who have married, and they have not married outside Bihar, we have checked that data. Are more women marrying outside Bihar? No, that's not the case. So a woman who has migrated, that is to say, who has left her Maika, has gone to Sasural, has now been deleted from Maika and not been entered in Sasural. That is why they have been. So the entire exercise discriminates against women. And this is not the only instance, Karan. The other point that we discussed earlier, which is women having to prove that their parents were on the electoral rolls of 2003. Now, if you are a man, you simply have to produce certificate for your own booth because your father, your grandfather stayed there. But a woman has to bring a certificate from her Maika to say that 22 years ago, her parents used to were on the voters list. Clearly, it discriminates against women. So the entire SIR is systematically loaded against women.
Secondly, if I recall correctly, the Supreme Court had earlier said that if 15 people were found who were wrongly declared dead, the court would intervene. As far as I know, that requirement so far hasn't been fulfilled, but what are the chances it will be fulfilled by the time the next hearing happens on the 8th of September? Because that would then require the Supreme Court to intervene. It's given a commitment it will.
Karan, it's more than fulfilled because there are hundreds of news reports now. Every day, someone is having a litti or chai with a dead person. Rahul Gandhi had tea with 9 of them. So, I mean, we have hundreds of cases. The only question is, what does it mean for the court to intervene? The court thinks that they have already intervened by making it possible for them to come back to the voters list. I don't think that's exactly what was required. I think what was required was looking at this entire exercise, the arbitrariness which made it possible for for living people to be put in the dead category. Not merely a relief to say, okay, you're not dead, come onto the list. And sadly, even now, most of the people who have been declared dead but are alive are being made to fill Form 6, which is what a young person of 18-year age would have to fill to get onto the voters list afresh. So while the Supreme Court may think that they have already responded and redressed, much more needs to be done.
Yogendra Yadav, is this a second issue you'll raise at the Supreme Court hearing on the 8th?
Indeed, we raised it on 22nd itself. And we had suggested that actually those who have been declared dead, but who are alive, they should not be asked to fill a fresh Form 6. All that they are required is to say, look, I'm alive. You made a mistake. Please correct it. And there is a provision under Rule 21 of the Registration of Electors Rules, which allows this the election officer to correct any mistakes they might have made. Now, to my mind, this is a case of correction of mistake. It is not my mistake that you declared me dead. But the hearing was very short. Unfortunately, it was short, cramped, and sadly, the Election Commission filled the time with a lot of what appeared to me to be absolutely irrelevant things in the case. So yes, all these issues should and must come up.
Thirdly, the Election Commission has also claimed that block-level agents of the 12 recognized political parties in Bihar have only submitted 10 claims and objections, thus suggesting that the allegations made by political parties are untrue. However, newspapers have frequently reported that attempts by BLAs to file objections have been thwarted by Election Commission officials themselves. What is the truth?
Sadly, the Election Commission wove a fairy tale, and which it has been doing right from day one. If you remember, from the very first press release onward, Election Commission says we are working as a team. It's not just the 1 lakh BLOs. BLO is the Sarkari officer, usually a school teacher or a Anganwadi worker. It's not just the BLO. We also have an army of 1.6 lakh BNAs. BNAs are agents appointed by political parties who, unlike in the past, do not work only on the polling day, but they are also allowed to work throughout the 5 years. Election Commission said we are BLOs and BLAs are working together. We are working as a team, and that's why we've had such a great success. And then the period of objections and claims begins. And the same election commission, which till yesterday said that because of the great cooperation accepted by BLAs, we have managed to have this success. The same election commission now gleefully reports every day that we've had zero submission from any election BLA. And mind you, this is zero submission not just from Congress or RJD or CPIML, also zero submission from BJP and JDU. Forget the opposition for the time being. Karan, can you imagine that no agent of the BJP has found a single case worth re-entering or being turned into a new voter? It is impossible. If you don't trust the Congress party, if you say RJD doesn't have that kind of a ground level presence, trust the BJP at least on this. The reality, Karan, is that on the ground, when people are going to make their claims, the election officers are saying, all right, I'll take your claim. We haven't had instances of denial of claim. But they're saying, what is this political party worker doing with it? Bhai, aap hat jaiye, hum aapka claim le lete hain. So all the work being done by BLAs or political party workers is being registered as individual complaints, which incidentally have crossed 4 lakhs or so by now. So that is what is happening. And when the one party which the Election Commission credited initially for having filed 2 objections, the CPIML Liberation, their own General Secretary has actually gone public to say how much hard work they had to do, how much pressure they had to put in order for those 2 cases to be registered as cases brought by the BLA of a political party. The simple fact is, at the ground level, those claims are being not entertained at all.
So once again, this is sleight of hand of a different type, no doubt, but it's sleight of hand nonetheless.
Here is an authority. Look, it's a constitutional authority. I'll repeat what I started with. Look, companies, commercial companies, corporates give you exaggerated, bombastic claims. You take it with a pinch of salt. Unfortunately, government department, ministries, and particularly ministers across regime, and I don't blame any one party, they are in the habit of providing this kind of rosy pictures. But you don't expect a constitutional authority to say something like this. I expect a constitutional authority to give me sober figures to say, this is what has been done, this has not done, we are concerned about the following 3 things, we are trying to improve that. Because your job is not to say all is well. Your job is to say whatever is wrong should be put in the public domain, and you should be putting in provisions. You should be putting things in order that it doesn't happen.
So now, as we approach the end of the last phase, what's your opinion of this exercise? How do you view the SIR?
To my mind, any exercise in voter list revision should be judged by 3 yardsticks. Number 1, completeness. Second is accuracy. Number 3 is equity. In terms of completeness, Bihar, which is to say how inclusive is the voters list, Bihar was 97% when the SIR began. It came down to 88%. And if any significant deletions take place on account of lack of documents, it will be lower than that. So that's a failure clearly. In terms of accuracy, because mind you, that's the central claim of SIR. Okay, we may have been slightly over the board, but we've cleaned it up. We have purified. We have now a perfect electoral rolls. That claim has been simply blown apart by not merely by the instances of alive people who have been declared dead, But the multiple instances now being reported, one house with 290 names. I know of one house that houses the entire booth of 924 voters. We have instances of duplication, not just in one or two places, but seven or eight places. So clearly, duplication has not been done away with. The figures available with us suggest that in every single constituency, anything between 2 to 5,000 names have been duplicated. So, if accuracy was your criteria, then duplicacy has not been removed. Dubious household names have not been removed. We do not yet know what accuracy improvement has taken place. And finally, equity. We know for sure that the whole thing has been designed, has systematically discriminated against women. In our own little survey, we found out that people who are liable to be left out on account of lack of documents are more likely to be SC and the EBC, the lowest OBCs. So it's loaded against the poor and the disadvantaged and the marginal groups. So to my mind, so far, the SIR exercise has failed in all the three tests. It has made it less complete, not more accurate. I would not say more inaccurate, I don't know, but at least as inaccurate as it used to be, and certainly more iniquitous.
In other words, it's failed effectively on all three counts.
Exactly. Such a large exercise with bombastic claims and very little to show. Does it not remind you of something, Karan? It was called demonetization.
When I last interviewed you on the 31st of July, you said the SIR was, and I'm quoting, the single biggest act of disenfranchisement in the history of independent India and perhaps in the history of any country in the 21st century. Today, 3 weeks later, is that opinion being borne out?
We still would have to say it could, because the Supreme Court has come in effectively. The Supreme Court, to my mind, has now been very, very conscious of this fact. As a matter of fact, the constitutional questions have not figured that much in the Supreme Court's deliberations so far. The court's intervention now is to ensure that no more deletions take place. In fact, the Election Commission's advocate in the Supreme Court, Senior Advocate Rakesh Dwivedi, went so far as to say twice or thrice in the course in the hearing of the Supreme Court, "Sir, please look at just wait for what we do. We will not delete anyone. I assure you, no one will be deleted." So there is a control. The disenfranchising potential of the SIR is being significantly controlled by the Supreme Court. My worry, however, is that unless the order itself is modified, unless the SIR order and its conditions are changed, merely giving concessions in the case of Bihar is postponing the problem. Okay, you give concessions in Bihar, you reduce the disenfranchising effect in Bihar, but what about Bengal? What about Assam? So I would not be satisfied till the disenfranchising provisions themselves are rooted out, not merely concessions in the case of Bihar.
And let me add, a lot depends upon the Supreme Court on the 8th of September at its next hearing, clarifying that the authorization to use Aadhaar as the document which is sufficient also applies to the 43% of people out of the 7.24 crore on the draft electoral roll who do not have any documents at all. Because if it doesn't apply to them, they'll be disenfranchised. And that's when your fear that 2 crore could be struck off will become a reality. So a lot depends upon that one critical thing happening when the Supreme Court hears this case again on the 8th, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A lot depends on the Supreme Court. One, to check this possible disenfranchisement, but also to block all possible avenues of disenfranchisement for future in states other than Bihar as well.
Absolutely, since it is the intention of the Election Commission to hold SIRs in other states, starting with Bengal, starting with Assam, and they've also notified Orissa, it's essential that the problems that have been discovered are cured permanently and don't repeat themselves, because then we'll be going through history all over again next year.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yogendra Yadav, thank you very much for the time you've given me. Take care. Stay safe. Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.